Hi, my name is Ari Illinois. This is my project for the course Advanced Programming. This is the final project showing the computational graph system I built for creating and managing computational graphs. The goal of this project is to better understand complex libraries by implementing our own. This was done by creating libraries used for building graphs using nodes and edges and allowing different computations and calculations to be done. First, I built the model layer, which contains the publishers, subscribers, topics, and messages, which I'll describe shortly. Then the control layer, which contains the HTTP server. And finally, the view layer, which contains the HTML web user interface. This project is designed with the MCV model. First, we have the model layer, which comprises the publisher and subscriber infrastructure. We have agents, which serve as nodes in the graph, and we have topics which help agents communicate with one another. An agent can subscribe to topics and publish to topics. If an agent publishes to a topic, then it will send what is called a message to that topic, and that message will be sent to all of the topic's subscribers. In this way, agents can receive inputs from a certain topic, do computations on them, and output the result as a message to another topic. This relationship between the agents and topics is represented by directed edges in the graph, where an agent points to topics it publishes to, and topics point to its subscribers. Next, we have the control layer, which implements on an HTTP web server. Here we use 3 different servlets to help us load and display information for our web page. We have the configuration file servlet, which allows us to upload a configuration file that describes how we want the graph to look, which agents there are, and which topics they are subscribed to and published to. Next, we have the HTML loader servlet. This allows us to load our HTML files in order to display them on the web page. Lastly, we have the topic displayer servlet. This allows us to display the topics given to us by the configuration file and to display their values. Finally, we have the view layer. This implements our web user interface and updates in real time according to the messages that we send. Now we'll see how this program actually works. We'll run the main, which uses the libraries I made. Of course, you can use these libraries to design your own graph also, but we're going to run the main. Okay, now I'm going to run the code, and we see that the server started successfully, and it's available at this link. So we're going to open that. Now we're going to go to that link, and here we see our user interface. Here we choose our configuration file, here we will see the graph, and here we will see the topics with their values. So we're going to see a few examples. Let's start with this simple one. We click deploy, and here we see our graph. So we see that this is our graph, these are our topics, and we see with each topic, we see how many subscribers it has and how many publishers it has. So what we can do now is send a message. We can send, let's send to A the value 3. So we send it and we see the value appear here. Now if we choose to send to B, we'll see what happens. We can send this value. And what happens is because A sends to the plus agent 1 and B sends to plus agent 1, we expect C to get the result of the sum of the two, because the plus agent gets 2 inputs and outputs the sum. And let's send that, and we see that our table is updated. We have the 3 that we sent to A, the 6 that we sent to B, and C gets 9, which is the sum of those two. We can also see that once C got the value 9, it sends to the increment agent. And what that does is it takes the value that it received and increments by 1. So since C had the value 9, it sends to the increment agent, and we expect D to have the value of 10, which we see in this table worked as we expected. Now let's upload another file to see an example. This file is going to have a circle, and we receive here a warning that there are cycles in the graph. We see that they point to each other, and this is a feature that I added, that we get warned about cycles because they're dangerous. One last example is a more complicated graph. We click deploy, and we see this graph. We send 6 to B, and we'll send 6 also to A. We'll see that all the nodes get updated because it's a more complicated graph, and A and B get added and sent to R1, which we see is 12, and then that gets increased by 1 to R2, and we get the value of 13, and so on for the rest of the values. If we follow the graph, we can understand what happens. I also added the feature where we see how many nodes we have, and we see the time when the values are last updated. In this project, I learned many things, such as distributed systems, using an HTTP server, building it from scratch, thread-safe programming, building clean and maintainable code, writing documentation using JavaDoc, which helps other developers understand better my code, and lots of problem-solving skills. So that is the project, and thank you for listening.